Back here at the NFL Combine, Trevor Sikkema, PFF lead draft analyst, joining us. Trevor, so great to talk to you, man. Let's just do big picture first in terms of talent-wise this draft. How does it compare to some others? What are some strengths and weaknesses that this draft class has that maybe others didn't?
I think it's a heavy defensive draft, to be honest with you. I think that, there's a world where we could get almost 3/4 of the top 100 are defensive picks. I think it's a really good year for linebacker. I think it's a good year for corner at the top. It's a pretty deep safety class. And defensive line, obviously, I feel like every year there's a handful of defensive linemen. And even if there's not guys who are star-studded at the top, which I think that we do have a couple of those guys, it's always pretty deep, and I think that this year is no different. I think those two positions that I mentioned, though, linebacker and safety, it's not often you get deep linebacker and safety classes. And I think that this year, combining what is almost always a pretty stacked defensive positions of defensive line and corner, we know that those guys are going to be good. It really is those off-ball linebackers and the safeties that I think really elevate this defensive group. So I think it is a pretty heavy defensive draft. Not to say there's not good offensive players. I just think that when you look at the offense overall, it feels like there's some really good guys at the top. It's not as deep overall offensively as we have seen in past drafts. So that's what I would say is there's definitely some stars to get on offense, but in terms of the depth, defense is the depth here for this year's class.
You
that's
just made us
music
cry.
in my ears. No, you did not. No. I'm going to look. Let's turn
Let's
it
do
around.
positive. Make it positive.
If 75 of the first 100 are defensive players and we only want offensive players, that means we get 3 of the best 25 offensive players in the draft.
That could.
You thrive on
There you go. There you go.
Thrives on enthusiasm.
Now
I
it's
love it.
inverted.
Yeah.
I'm glad you don't have to end the interview with me because of my negativity right off the bat.
Listen,
That's
I
good.
like it. We're picking 6, 24, 39. Obviously looking to get 3 starters. I believe all 3 will be on offense. So according to what you were saying, I like that. Let other teams draft all the defensive players they want. You want off-ball linebackers?
100%.
Guess what? We got Carson Schlesinger. No, thank you. We got Grant Delpit and Ronnie Hickman safety. You're fine. When you look at the offensive side, let's focus on the 2 positions, and one else calls a group offensive line, wide receiver. Let's start with the wide receivers. Mm-hmm. What do you like about this class, and is there somebody that you would pull the trigger on at 6?
There's definitely somebody that I'd pull the trigger on at 6. In fact, I think that there are the 3 names that a lot of people will have in Brown's mock drafts that I have done before. Mekhi Lemon from USC is one of them. I think he's worthy of the 6th overall pick. I see him as somebody who could blossom into an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of a player with just how consistent he is, how he helps in the run game, the hands, the route running, the separation, all of that. I think he is fantastic. Some people might look at the build of him and, all right, 5'11", 195 pounds. They go, is that really a wide receiver, the type that you would draft in the top 10? I would tell you to go watch the film. How much he helped USC and how much he was the focal point for them. So he's somebody that I would consider there at the very top. Carnell Tate from Ohio State. The stat that I love the most about Carnell Tate from this past season, 0.0 drop rate from him this season. If it was in his mitts, he was catching it. And you can go even beyond that. Contested catches, 85.7% when it came to contested catches for Carnell Tate. You're lucky if you're at 60%. Yeah. And he was at 85.7. So you talk about a guy who has some twitch to him, some body control to be able to run a lot of different routes, and then you bring in what he could be when the ball is in the air. That is a player that you really love to lean into in the passing game. The player that I actually think has the highest ceiling is Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State. He's my wide receiver 1. Now, I will say that he's my wide receiver 1 independently of what might be some injury concerns with him because, the combine's going to be really big for him to see what the medicals are like, and he's not even participating here because of that hamstring injury that he had this past season. He had major knee reconstruction surgery. I believe it was 3 years ago as well. He had a collarbone injury too, but, man, you turn on the tape, and I feel like most of the time that you watch most of the time that you watch Jordan Tyson, it's like a Golden Tate type of a player, really shifty, knows how to put all sorts of defensive backs in conflict, creates that separation, is really tough at the catch point, some really great catches. But then there are also times where he's like, okay, well, you look like Odell there, actually. You look like Odell Beckham Jr. So if you get somebody who you tell me most of the time is Golden Tate and then sometimes he's Odell, that is one hell of an NFL wide receiver. So those 3 guys, I think, are the ones that you consider early. But I like Denzel Boston as well. Somebody who you'd probably think about picking there in the 20s. Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M and his speed, maybe you think about him. And then when you get into the second round, it's guys like, Jeremy Bernard or Omar Cooper Jr. or Elijah Surratt. There's a lot of different types of receivers that you can get in this class.
I think for Browns fans, what they're trying to assess here, and certainly we are as well, is You had that group at 6. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You like Denzel Boston. I think that's an obvious one to like. The size feels like an AFC North guy that you could see succeeding out there. Is the gap between, let's say offensive tackle, wide receiver, the tackle that you could get at 6 versus 24, or the receiver you get at 6 versus 24, which is a bigger gap? Which is more scarce?
So it's a great question. I'm glad that you asked it, because building draft strategies, I don't think we talk about enough. I think we talk about the prospects and everything, and this guy could fit here, could fit there, but what these general managers do is they truly build these draft strategies. And the one that I like the most for Cleveland is taking offensive line first. Anytime that you have an offensive line need, I'm almost always going to tell you, if you've got 2 first-round picks, like if you have a scenario that's like this, take the offensive lineman first, because they don't grow on trees. They don't become available very often, right? I mean, you look at wide receiver. Not that you don't want to take good wide receivers, especially
when you're in a
situation, right? When you're in a situation like Cleveland is. But I tell people, generally, you have a chance as a team to have to acquire a difference-making wide receiver, a high-impact wide receiver, whether that's a wide receiver 1 or somebody that's a fringe 1 or 2, whatever. You have the opportunity to get one of those guys in your football team every other year, whether that's via the draft or even the trade market. We see good wide receivers hit the trade market all the time.
That's how we've gotten ours.
You know, when you have the opportunity to get a good offensive lineman, specifically a good offensive tackle, drafting them in the top 10, and that is it. That's basically it. And that's sort of how you need to prioritize it. So especially with this draft class, even though it's not a draft class that has, Tristan Wirfs and Andrew Thomas and those guys in it, if you want a good wide receiver, if you want a good offensive tackle and a good offensive lineman in this class, I would tell you, draft one early, because you're going to be able to find a wide receiver that can make an impact for your team a little bit later.
So if we follow that strategy and draft the tackle at 6, which one, let's say they're all there, who's there at 6 that you're like, that's the guy?
I think that Francis Mauigoa, the offensive lineman from Miami, I think he is really, really solid. And it kind of just depends on what type of a scheme Todd Monken kind of wants to run in the run game. Does he want to be really multiple when it comes to, outside zone versus a little bit more in between the tackle stuff? Do you want more of a power downhill run game type of approach? So, because that kind of goes into it, right? Like Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle from Utah, I think that you consider here as well. But Fano, I think his grades in our system are so much better as an outside zone type of a rusher. Like, he's somebody who is really athletic. He's right around 300, 305 pounds, so he's a little bit lighter of an offensive tackle, but the guy can get out of his stance. The guy can get on the hoof. He can really get to the outside. And if you want to run more of that outside zone run scheme, I think you consider him potentially there at number 6. But if you want somebody who's a little bit more of a downhill runner, somebody's going to beat you up front, really be able to execute duo blocks and just push people against their will, Mauigoa is a little bit stronger, and he's built that way. I think his frame's a lot like that. So those are the 2 guys that I would probably have the most confidence in when it comes to number 6 for them.
All right, let me go back to a couple things you said there. So at 6, every tackle in this draft, you mentioned the Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs draft. Well, we also drafted a tackle in that draft at number 10.
It's true.
Jed Wills, who's not in the league currently.
Right.
What can we learn from Jed Wills and why that went that way for us? And then also, how would you grade these guys versus that class? Because that class also had Becton, and there were kind of 4 of them that people thought were all really good. Wirfs ends up going, I want to say, 12, 13, something. He went after us. I know that.
Yes.
We're picking 6 here.
Right.
So how does this group stack with that group? And then just about with a guy like Jed, what do you learn from that as an evaluator?
Yeah, I mean, I think that group was pretty special, especially just for the 2 guys that have really panned out within that group of Andrew Thomas and Tristan Wirfs, 2 of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. With this group, I think that it's a solid group, and I think that it's starters. I wouldn't put it at the talent ceiling that those guys had from that class. And then, when you talk about Jed Wills, I like Jedrick Wills a lot coming out of Alabama as well. And really, I think there were some durability concerns with him, obviously dealing with injuries, but when it just comes to the foot speed and being able to handle power, but also not being able to not panicking against finesse moves, I feel like that's something that just never really came along with Wills. It just felt like he was not as in control as he needed to be. And I think that when you look at some of the players that I mentioned, specifically I'll say Mauigoa, they're just, especially this past year, there really wasn't a time where I felt like he was panicked or that he didn't feel in control. Like, he just plays with a ton of confidence. He plays with a lot of good power. It's funny, I've been having this conversation very recently with a lot of some people who are former offensive linemen, some people who are, covering it from a draft perspective. And everybody kind of focuses on the flashy parts of pass rushing and pass protection, right? They talk about the guys who've got the dip and rip, the bend moves, the speed, like the just winning from a finesse perspective, and how these offensive tackles, well, does he have quick enough footwork? Can he vertical set? Can he handle these speed rushers? And a lot of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, Teron Armstead is a guy who is obviously one of the best in the NFL for a long, long time, an all-pro, somebody who was on our PFF show for every week of the season this past year. We talked to him consistently, and he's like, guys, it's all about power. Like, it really is. If you can't stop power at the NFL level, like, you're not going to survive. And so when I look at these guys that I feel best about from the offensive tackle position, I look at how Maui Noa handles power. And I look at how there's not a lot of panic to his game at all when he's handling power. And is the foot speed as fast as it is for some like Andrew Thomas or Tristan Wirfs? No. But I think that the way that he handles power, the way that he's in control, that's sort of that like learning lesson that I would take from a Jedrick Wills. It never felt like he became a player who was in control enough of a situation. And when I look at Maui Noa, I feel as though there's so much in control about his game, and he's been a starter for 3 straight years at right tackle for Miami, and he's got the experience, and he's getting better. This past year was the best year he's ever had. He's a younger prospect at 20 or 21 years old. So all of that just makes me feel like you could have confidence in him being the pick at number 6.
So, Trevor, you mentioned draft strategy. If you were Andrew Berry and you have the 3 picks that we have, the 2 ones, let's say we give you the keys to the kingdom. Mm-hmm. How would you navigate this? Trade down, stay at 6, 2 linemen receiver. How would you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, so the trade down factor is always you got to find a dance partner, right? It takes 2 to tango. And if I'm going to sit here and say, well, this isn't the most star-studded draft at the very top, well, then I can't just also say like, oh, yeah, you're going to trade down, because you got to find somebody who'll give you the value that you want.
Got to hope somebody loves Jeremiah Love or Downs or something like that.
Or something like that with them sitting at number 6. So, but the way, as much as I really do love the wide receivers, I think the way that I would go about it is I feel like a perfect draft for the Cleveland Browns is, you get Maui Noa at number 6, you get Denzel Boston at 24. And if Denzel Boston's off the board by the time you get to 24, then you're in a situation where trading down becomes a lot easier, right? Teams are the value of what you could get when you're trading down makes a lot more sense. And so maybe you're in a trade down perspective there and you feel pretty good about that. But then honestly, top of, because where do they pick in the second round? Where
39.
Is it? It's 39. So then you get to number 39, and at that point, honestly, I'm probably double dipping on offensive line again. I'm going offensive line there, and I'm picking one of the better guys that's left, right? Like if Maui Noa is going to be your offensive tackle, then you get into the beginning of the second round, and you look at guys who might be guards like Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, right? Is he available? How do you feel about Jennings Dunker as somebody who played offensive tackle at Iowa, but I think he's more of a guard? Like, you get some players like that. I think Vega Owane from Penn State's going to be long gone at that point, but I think there will be offensive line options for them at number 39 that you could feel good about. But to be honest, with those two out of those 3 picks in a perfect world, I'm trying to double dip on offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've been pretty. That's what we wanted. Yeah. We just want to make sure we get a stud receiver. The Browns, since coming back in '99, have only picked a receiver in the first round twice. Braylon Edwards and Corey Coleman.
Ooh.
That's it. That's exclusive list.
That's
the end of it.
That's an underrated stat because everybody talks about the Green Bay Packers, right? How they hadn't drafted one in the first round since Javon Walker before Matthew Golden, right? And everybody just talked about that. But
they also had a lot of second round hits. They did a pretty good job with Devontae Adams. Devontae, and that's funny. That's changing the NFL.
And I mean, let's face it. I mean, when you have Favre and Aaron Rodgers, they can kind of make it work with a lot of those guys.
So that certainly helps. I want to go back to this receiver group at 6. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody in this year's class that you grade? Because we were huge Tet McMillan fans on this program. I wanted him very badly for this football team.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you like in this draft as much as you like Tet McMillan?
Tyson would be somewhat close for me, but the medicals cloud it entirely. So I can't in all good consciousness say that. The short answer is no. Tet would be my wide receiver 1 in this class as well. Although, again, if Tyson's medicals check out, I think that this is a guy who can be major high-impact wide receiver for you. The way that I watch him put defensive backs in conflict, when he is coming off the line of scrimmage, when he is eating up that cushion, and it is just all it takes is one of those moves. Tyson is one of the best wide receivers in college football and in this draft class at running straight at a defensive back, right? Keep making them keep their shoulders square, right? He's not hinting which way he's going one way or the other so the defensive back can sort of like move their shoulders or their hips or cheat a little bit to cut on the route. He's so good at running straight at them, and then the second that he gets right next to this player, boom, the foot goes in the ground, and he creates that crazy
separation.
Kind
of like Jackson Smith-Njigba?
A little bit, yeah. And now I think Smith-Njigba's a little bit more savvy, and I think that Jordan Tyson's honestly a little bit more explosive, sharper in his cuts. But yes, to exactly what you're saying, being able to create that consistent separation, it's just that's stuff that you can't teach. People that have the ability to change direction on a dime like that is so rare, even at the NFL level when you're playing at full speed. And it's those moments that make me think, man, if you are fully healthy, you can just really be a difference-making wide receiver in the league. So I think my answer, the long answer would be Tyson's close, but the medicals have to check out for him. So if you include the medicals, then no, Tet would have been my wide receiver one this year.
All right. Trevor, it's great talking.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
much
for your
time.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Thank
Greatly
you.
appreciate you.